Imagine carrying a bag on your back, but no one sees it. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't leave marks on the floor, but it's heavy. It weighs so much that, little by little, it steals the sparkle from your eyes, the lightness of your breathing, and even the meaning of your mornings. It's not physical fatigue, it's a tiredness of the soul, as if something was silently sucking his energy. No explanation, no name, no witnesses. You keep living, doing what you need to do, smiling at the world. But inside you feel like you're emptying out. Maybe you've never told anyone this, or maybe you don't even know exactly where that weight comes from. But it's there. It's always been there. And today, you will finally understand why. Carl Jung said that the chosen are rarely recognized for their achievements, but almost always by invisible weight that they carry in silence. Because whoever has one sole mission feels too much, feel the world, feel others, feel the pain, even when no one sees. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here, as 7 hidden charges that drain the energy of the chosen ones, loads that act silently, and for that very reason, they are the most dangerous. But today, something changes. Today, you will see what has never been said. Go name what holds you back, and most importantly, you will learn to let go. By the way, if at any point in this video you feel like this is what I needed to hear, leave a comment where you're watching me from, your city, your country. This is how we recognize each other. This is how the chosen ones meet. And if you want to continue receiving content like this, that welcome the invisible and help alleviate what weighs on you, subscribe to the channel now and activate notifications, because this journey is just beginning. If you feel in your heart that this is for you, stay until the end, because what will be revealed now could be the beginning of your inner liberation. There is a type of silent self-sabotage that disguises itself as praise. It's the invisible addiction to approval. You start out seeking recognition simply as a way to reinforce that you're on the right path. But little by little, you lose yourself in the pursuit of acceptance. The world teaches you to seek applause, likes, and comments, as if the value of your spiritual journey could be measured by the reactions of others. But for chosen, this pattern is even crueler. They didn't come to please, they came to confront. And this rarely generates applause at first. Carl Jung said that what you seek outside controls you. And when your self-esteem depends on the gaze of others, your energy is at the mercy of external factors. You live in fear of disappointing, of appearing inadequate, of not being enough. Every post, every choice, every decision becomes a piece on a validation board. But spiritual awakening doesn't fit into this game. True inner transformation only happens when you decide to stop molding yourself to fit in. Because whoever was born to fulfill a soul mission, you can't live asking for permission. The most subtle thing is that this poison is rarely noticed. You feel the emotional fatigue, the constant doubt, the fear of making mistakes, and you attribute it to weakness, lack of focus, or even laziness. But deep down, it's your being begging you to stop fading away. Chosen often walk alone because their essence disturbs those who are still asleep, and it takes courage to continue even without an audience. Silence may be uncomfortable at first, but it is also where your inner strength begins to emerge. This pattern begins early, often in childhood. The child who only receives affection when they get good grades, the teenager who learns to fit in to avoid rejection. Years later, the adult still repeats this same pattern, only now with more sophisticated masks. They trade essence for performance. And the worst part, they do it without realizing it. This creates one of the invisible charges heavier, living to please. The result is a soul full of tasks, but empty of meaning, a spiritual emptiness that nothing external can fill. To break this cycle, an act of inner rebellion is necessary. Start small. Say no when you want to say no. Post something you believe in, even if it doesn't get any likes. Make a decision based on your heart, not on other people's expectations. This is emotional release. Don't shout to the world that you don't care anymore. Just be silent. And in that silence, observe what remains within you. True validation comes from the peace that comes when you live in coherence with what you feel. The rest is just noise. And the most beautiful thing about all this is that when you stop begging for recognition, you start attracting respect. The right people stay. The ones who were there just for convenience disappear. And that's okay. Chosen. They don't need a crowd. They need a purpose. And purpose doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in the way you walk, even without applause. Now that we've begun to look at this first invisible prison, let's take it a step further. Because there's another, even quieter trap: comparison. Comparison is treacherous because it seems harmless. It doesn't shout, it doesn't accuse, it doesn't confront, but it acts like a slow poison, silently undermining your confidence. You wake up feeling good until you open your phone and see someone else achieving something, and suddenly, for no apparent reason, a sense of unease sets in. That subtle thought, am I behind? And thus one of the hidden wounds most common among the chosen one. Comparison is the invisible ruler that measures your journey against someone else's and distorts everything. Carl Jung said that each soul has its own time to blossom, but we live as if there were a universal timer for happiness, success, and even spirituality. Chosen, they feel this weight even more strongly because their process is internal, deep, and often slow. While the world boasts achievements, they are healing patterns. While some accumulate medals, they face unexplained emotional pain. And in this contrast, a feeling of inadequacy is born that has no name, but weighs like lead. The most dangerous of the destructive comparison, it's that it disguises itself as motivation. You think you're being inspired when in reality you're shrinking. You look at other people's brilliance and forget your own light. But the truth is simple. No one shows their mess. Everyone displays only what they want. And you, without realizing it, compare your pain to the edited showcase of others. This steals your joy, drains your energy, and erases your identity. It's a kind of drained energy that doesn't come from outside. It comes from the way you see yourself. The chosen have a unique calling, and so comparison is an even crueler trap. How can you compare the mission of someone who came to break patterns with the life of someone who is merely repeating them? It's impossible. Journey of the chosen ones, it's more solitary, requires more silence, and seems slower, but each step is a break with the invisible. There is no finish line. There is presence, there is coherence, and there is truth. When you trade the yardstick of comparison for the compass of intuition, everything starts to make sense again. So how can you break free from this in practice? Start by replacing the question, why don't I have this yet, with what makes sense for me now. Write down your own success criteria and celebrate small advances, even if no one sees them. Value your inner care, your limits, your pauses. The silence you're experiencing today is preparation. The strength that's being born within you won't be understood by those who still live on autopilot. But you're not late. You're in process. And that's more sacred than it seems. And if you still doubt your worth, take a deep breath and look back. See everything you've overcome, everything you've faced in silence. That's no small thing. That's strength. Now that you've started to let go of this silent comparison, it's time to look at another poison disguised as a habit: chronic complaining. Yes, even the words we repeat without thinking have the power to imprison us. Daily complaints seem harmless. Sometimes it's just a rant in traffic, a slurred criticism about work, an automatic lament upon waking. But this accumulation of repeated dissatisfaction forms a heavy energy field around us. For chosen, who have heightened sensitivity, this habit can become a spiritual anchor. With each negative word, the vibration drops, and what could be faced with courage becomes an emotional loop. Healing of the invisible, it also starts with language. Carl Jung said that everything we deny within ourselves is projected onto the world. And often, complaining is the echo of what we're unwilling to transform. Instead of acting, we talk. Instead of taking responsibility, we point the finger. And this drains us. Complaining too much is like leaving a faucet dripping inside our soul. Little by little, it floods everything. Emotional fatigue. What you feel may not come from the world, but from the narratives you've been fed. Repeating that nothing works doesn't solve anything. It only reinforces what paralyzes you. There's a difference between expressing your feelings and living in a state of grievance. The former liberates, the latter imprisons. Many cozen. They confuse sensitivity with powerlessness. They feel the world so intensely that they end up accepting pain as part of their destiny. But it isn't. Being sensitive isn't being held hostage. It's having a clearer vision of life's invisible gears. And for this very reason, it's urgent to use this strength wisely. Exchanging the repetition of the problem for the search for a solution is a spiritual act. This transition begins with mindfulness. Every time you complain, ask yourself, does this bring me closer to who I want to be? It sounds simple, but it changes everything. The energy of intention you put into your words shapes your reality. For Hosen, this is even more true. Because your vibration affects your surroundings, your relationships, and your own body. When you choose creative silence over automatic complaint, something aligns within, and what seemed like a burden becomes a boost. Start with daily practices. Instead of complaining about the time, be grateful for the break. Instead of cursing work, recognize what it teaches you. It's not about romanticizing suffering, but about broadening your perspective. This is emotional intelligence applied to spirituality. The emotional release, it doesn't begin with grand rituals, but with small, conscious gestures. When you change the frequency of your words, your reality begins to respond differently, and the soul finally breathes. But there's something even more delicate than that, something that isn't said out loud, but is utterly draining, the relationships that empty the soul. And that's where the next point lies. Because it's not always what you feel. It's who you insist on keeping close. Not every weight you feel comes from within. Sometimes what paralyzes you is the environment, the look in your eyes, the company you're seeing. Some relationships become invisible charges that you carry out of loyalty, fear, or guilt. And before you know it, you're drained. People don't have to shout at you to drain you. They just need to not see you. Silent suffering, the most common among the chosen, begins like this, being invisible where you most want to be welcomed. And then you start to confuse love with effort, presence with obligation. Carl Jung spoke of the unconscious archetypes that govern our choices. Many of these relationships that hurt you are linked to old, inherited, or internalized patterns. You feel the need to be there, even when everything inside you demands distance. These are friendships that have become veiled disputes. Relatives who judge you under the guise of concern. Bonds that feel like ties but act like chains. And you, for fear of appearing selfish, remain available even when you're emotionally at your limit. But healthy relationships don't require masks. They don't demand performance. They don't mock your deep spirituality, nor do they lessen your pain. They allow you to exist whole without having to shrink. The problem is that chosen, they tend to sacrifice themselves in the name of love. They believe they need to save, support, or carry others, but true love doesn't require self-effacement. Those who truly love you don't need you to sacrifice yourself to fit into their life. On the contrary, they hope you overflow. Cutting ties isn't necessarily about fighting. It's about redefining access. It's about deciding who still deserves to hear your vulnerability, your laughter, your routine. That's it. Self-love and limits. And as difficult as it may be at first, it's liberating. Because every time you choose to preserve your peace, instead of pleasing someone who hurts you, you take a step toward your inner care. And this healing is silent. It doesn't need justification. It needs integrity. It needs the courage to say enough, even without applause. To begin, notice how you feel after being with certain people. Light, nourished, or drained, confused, heavy. Your body always warns you before your soul gets sick. Respect this signal. Slow down the pace of texting. Reorganize your time. Choose where and with whom you want to invest your energy. Inner strength. Sometimes growing up means moving away. Sometimes loving means saying, I can't carry this with you anymore. And that's not rejection. It's spiritual discernment. It's aligning your energy with what strengthens you. Many people will walk away when you stop trying to please yourself. And that's okay. It just reveals who was there for convenience. Silent, toxic relationships air like energy vampires. They only survive as long as you don't notice. But from the moment you see, feel, and decide, something inside changes. And it is precisely at that moment that another prison reveals itself. Fault that is not yours, but you carry it as if it were. There are pains you feel, but that weren't born within you. They are old weights, inherited words, imposed silences. Fault that is not yours. It starts slowly, often disguised as responsibility. You feel like you should have done more, said something, avoided a fate, and before you know it, you're living in debt to a past that can't be changed. This is one of the most common burdens among chosen, the tendency to carry the world as if the suffering of others were your personal mission. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious. These are invisible loyalties you form without realizing it. A father who never cried, a mother who always gave in. And you, without knowing why, repeat this in your relationships, in your work, in your way of feeling. This silent self-sabotage convinces you that being too happy is selfish, that imposing limits is ungrateful, that resting is a luxury. And so, your soul bends, not by choice, but by ancestral conditioning. The problem is that this guilt doesn't present itself as a monster. It disguises itself as good intentions, as constant effort, as excessive worry. You blame yourself for not answering calls, for saying no, for not being able to carry everyone. But this isn't awareness. It's excess, and excessive responsibility becomes an internal prison. You feel exhausted and don't understand why. The truth is, you're living to repair pain you never caused, and this consumes you. Energy is vital. Freeing yourself from this burden doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means giving back to the other person what belongs to them. It means understanding that empathy isn't self-annihilation, that love isn't constant sacrifice, that saying, "That's not mine," is also an act of love. Self-love chosen. Because they feel too much, they confuse compassion with guilt. But there is a healthy line between helping and erasing yourself, and when you recognize that line, a true emotional release. You can start now. Write down what's weighing you down. Reread it and ask, is this really mine? You'll be surprised at how much accumulated pain came from outside and stayed. Returning this guilt is like emptying your backpack before continuing your journey. It makes room for the new, for lightness, for reconstruction. It's not about running from the consequences of your actions, but about stopping living by apologizing for existing. And the relief this brings cannot be explained. You just have to live it. And when that backpack starts to get lighter, you feel something different, a subtle call to keep going. But that's when a new lock appears, a lock that no one sees, but that holds you from within, resistance to change. And she doesn't let you know she's here. She just freezes you. You feel like something needs to change. You know life can't go on exactly as it is. But for some reason, you remain stagnant. Silent resistance to change is like quicksand. The more you try to escape it with justifications, the deeper you sink. For those chosen, this blockage is even more intense. because each step toward the new seems to threaten everything that has been built up until that point. The soul wants to go, but fear says, what if it all goes wrong? Carl Jung said that there is no awakening of consciousness without pain. Change hurts, not because it is wrong, but because it strips us of the illusion of control. There is comfort even in familiar pain. The old is familiar, even when it hurts. The new is uncertain, even when it is promising. The mind, programmed to survive, wants to hold on to what it already understands. But spiritual awakening begins precisely when you accept that discomfort can also be sacred. It is the announcement that the soul wants to grow. A chosen one syndrome often includes the burden of keeping everything running smoothly for everyone else, except yourself. You become the foundation of everything, and at the same time, a prisoner of your own fear. And that's exhausting. Tiredness of the soul. It comes not only from what you do, but from what you postpone, because postponing your own truth requires immense energy, and you feel as if you're living in suspension, neither here nor there, just stuck, frozen. Change doesn't have to be radical. Sometimes it's a tiny step, a symbolic gesture, a yes said firmly, a no sustained with peace. Every action aligned with what you feel is a thread pulling the chain that holds you back. The important thing is to start. Inner transformation, it doesn't happen with great revolutions, but with conscious micro-choices, one a day, one at a time. Each small decision toward the new weakens the power of fear and strengthens its inner strength. To do this, you need to embrace your fear, not run from it. Listen to it, write it down, understand what it wants to protect you from, and then, with compassion, say, now I'm truly here with you. Courage is not the absence of fear, but movement in spite of it. And the chosen, when they accept that they have been called to break, not to repeat, they begin to realize that change is also a spiritual service, because by changing your life, you change the field around you. And when you start moving, something unexpected happens. The emotions you've tried to silence for so long begin to speak. The pain that seemed dormant awakens. Sadness gains a voice. Anger demands space. Because the next step isn't just about what you do, it's about what you finally accept to feel. Some people learn from an early age that feeling too much is a problem, that showing pain is a weakness, that expressing deep emotions pushes people away. And so they create an armor around their soul. But what seems like protection is actually a blockage. Chosen, with their heightened sensitivity, often stifle their emotions so as not to disturb, so as not to appear too intense, too fragile, outside the norm. And this silencing becomes unexplained emotional pain, a pain that doesn't go away because it wasn't heard. Carl Jung said, what we do not face within ourselves, we will encounter as destiny. When you deny your feelings, you hand over the helm of your life to your unconscious. Ignored anger becomes chronic irritation. Repressed sadness becomes apathy. Suppressed fear becomes paralysis. And all of this slowly drains your energy, as if something were breaking inside. Invisible charges are formed not only by what we live, but by what we keep silent about, because what is not accepted becomes a symptom. Denying emotion doesn't eliminate it. It only sends it to a dark corner where it grows. It grows in the form of insomnia, anxiety, and disconnection. You start living on autopilot, functional on the outside, disconnected on the inside. And what hurts more, no one notices, because you've learned to smile, to be strong, to cope. But behind the performance lies a muffled scream, and the spiritual emptiness deepens, because you stopped being whole to be accepted. You stopped being true to appear stable. You chosen, they suffer greatly from this, because they feel the world in layers. They intuit things that others don't notice, and because they're not understood, they withdraw. They mold themselves. They become silent. But to deny what one feels is to cut off one's connection to the mission. It's to become blind to one's inner compass, and it's precisely the feeling, however uncomfortable, that reveals the next step. Emotional intelligence begins with permission. I can feel. I will not be swallowed by it. I will be guided. A powerful practice is conscious feeling. Set aside a few minutes a day to listen to what your body is trying to tell you. Write without filters. Name your emotions. Give space to what's been bottled up. This simple action already begins the process, healing of the invisible, because feeling is what transforms. Feeling is what liberates. Embraced emotion becomes a compass. Denied emotion becomes a prison. And for the chosen, feeling is not an obstacle. It is the language of the soul, your soul, the one in a hurry to be heard. And when you start to truly feel, without judgment, without shame, without a mask, you finally understand the weight that seemed yours. Maybe it was just an excess of what you denied, and in that exact moment, a key turns inside. Because the final step isn't about more pain, it's about what happens when you start to let it all go. And for the first time, you find yourself again. What if the weight you feel isn't failure, but the excess of everything you need to let go of? We spend so much time trying to do everything, to please, to maintain bonds, to appear strong, to meet expectations, that we forget the most essential thing. We weren't called to carry the world. We were called to awaken the world with our presence. And presence only exists where there's space. Therefore, there comes a time when the process demands courage not to do more, but to let go. Let go of what weighs us down, what holds us back, what drains us. Carl Jung said that becoming conscious is a painful but necessary process. And this is the point in the journey where chosen discover the harshest truth. To move forward, you have to let go. Let go of applause, comparison, complaints, draining relationships, guilt, fear, and even denial of emotions. Each of these points is invisible cargo that imprison your life force. And when you begin to release them, a silent miracle happens. You reconnect with who you've always been. Letting go is an act of faith, not faith in something outside, but in yourself. It's believing that what's left after everything falls is what truly sustains you. When you let go, you return. Return to your essence, to your intuition, to your truth. Emotional release of the chosen ones doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with a silence that welcomes, with an inner space that was previously occupied by guilt, fear, and noise. And that space is sacred. It's where soul mission finally blooms. Maybe you're still holding some of these burdens, maybe even all of them, but simply acknowledging this is the beginning of transformation. Inner transformation. It doesn't happen all at once. It's like the morning sun. It slowly enters, slowly illuminating. And each time you choose to shed a layer, you move closer to your calling. What seemed impossible to you begins to seem attainable. Because it wasn't weakness that was holding you back, it was unnecessary weight. And don't worry if you don't yet know how to let go of everything at once. No one does. The process is artisanal. One gesture a day, one choice at a time. And on this path, you begin to experience something new. Lightness with roots, peace with presence. The strength of those who don't need to prove anything because they are already whole inside. Chosen, we're not born to be perfect, but to be whole. And that only happens when you decide, in silence, to free yourself. When you let go, you finally understand. It's not about becoming someone better, it's about remembering who you already are. Spiritual weight. What seemed to crush you was, in fact, the excess of everything that wasn't you. Now, light, you can walk, not as someone seeking to fit in, but as someone who came to awaken, because the mission begins when you stop hiding behind what holds you back. You've made it this far, and that, in itself, is already a sign, because not everyone stays until the end of something that moves them inside. Not everyone has the courage to look head-on at what hurts in silence, but you stayed. And maybe, just because of that, something has already changed. Now take a deep breath. And ask yourself, honestly, which of these burdens are still with me? And which have I already begun to release, even without realizing it? You don't have to handle everything today, nor do you have to solve everything at once. A journey of the chosen ones is made of small but conscious steps. And every step you take echoes in the invisible. If anything that was said here touched you, write in the comments what touched you most. Sometimes a sincere sharing can heal not only the writer, but also the reader. This space is made for this, for those who feel the world in a different, deeper, more genuine way. If this message brought you clarity or relief, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you continue to receive content that embraces the invisible, recognizes your process, and strengthens your path. And if you know someone who also silently carries what no one sees, share this video with them. You can be the link that starts a transformation in her life. Here, you are not alone. You are part of a network of chosen ones who are awakening, step by step, with courage, with awareness, with truth. See you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself with love and presence.